Hey there, over the past two videos in this series, I've talked about the ways that I believe cryptocurrency could impact the US way of life and the way I think it's already changing our politics. As I said in parts 1 and 2, I do believe that Bitcoin is a lot scarier than China. And I also believe that Bitcoin is Ronald Reagan's revenge. But today, I want to focus on what I think is the most important part of my analysis. I believe that Bitcoin is US empire. In the last two videos, I talked about how crypto is getting into bed with Wall Street, despite advertising itself as being revolutionary and disruptive. Today, I want to talk about how crypto is likely to go even further and betray its libertarian promise by getting into bed with the US government, focusing its disruptive power against every other government in the world, not the most powerful one. Oh, before we go any further, I want to clarify something that's kept coming up in the comments. In the titles of these videos, the visuals, and in the scripts as well, I've been talking about Bitcoin specifically a lot. But that's just a search engine optimization strategy. It's not a vote for Bitcoin as the likely winner among all the competing cryptocurrencies. I'm well aware that there is a lot more to the space than just Bitcoin. Maybe Bitcoin is such a genius creation that it will outlive humanity itself and still be used by our descendants as they colonize the planets of Proxima Centauri. Or maybe it's MySpace, a clunky mess that demonstrated the value of a new technology but has already been superseded by new currencies in every way and whose value is only being propped up by naive bag holders who don't know anything about anything. Honestly, I don't really care. In this video and in this series, I'm thinking a little more big picture. I'm not focused on fiscal quarters. I'm thinking in decades, or in some cases in centuries. I'm not qualified to say which platform is best for which purpose. I can't predict which currency is going to win out. It's not something I'm really interested in doing in this series, though I know there are a lot of people in the comments who have opinions on that. So going forward, if I talk about Bitcoin, just assume I'm talking about the cryptocurrency space in the aggregate and not making a vote as to who's going to win out. All right, back to the main topic of today's video. The fact that I believe cryptocurrencies will end up being a tool of US empire. We're doing some speculative sci-fi type stuff today, but hey, crypto is some speculative sci-fi type stuff. Crypto is often advertised as being anti-US government, which is nonsense. To truly counter the US government, you need strong national governments elsewhere that can act to counter the US government. Crypto makes that less likely. To be clear, I don't want military competition for the US. That would be horrible for all of humanity. But I want competition in an economic and political sense. If the human race is going to hold on to any diversity and basic freedom over the next few centuries, it needs other governments that can negotiate with the United States with something approaching equality. And what I'm pretty sure crypto is going to do is further undermine every government in the world other than the United States. Cryptocurrency is a fundamentally disruptive technology, but to grow in any meaningfully exponential way and to provide the riches that most of its current holders are looking for, it needs government. There's a really fundamental misunderstanding in a lot of crypto commentary. The mere existence of this technology is not some universal solvent. The US government hasn't done much regulation yet, not because it's intimidated, but because honestly it just hasn't been paying attention. The whole sector of decentralized finance is a great example here. It's either going to get heavily regulated by the US government or it's going to disappear. Decentralized exchanges that attempt to continue to operate without US oversight have the same future as the Silk Road marketplace, an earlier attempt to use cryptocurrency to get around the law that is long dead. I think a lot of people assume that if there is a US crackdown, exchanges can move overseas and conduct business as usual. They can't. That is not the way the world works on the internet, and it's certainly not the way things have worked since 9/11. The entire planet is firmly ensnared in a web of US power. I'm no expert. Maybe it's true that this technology or some future version of this technology will be invulnerable to the prying eyes of the US government in some way. But even if that's true, you're going to want to use a bank somewhere in the world for some reason at some point. With FATCA, a law passed in 2011, the US has already stepped into the banking regulations of every country in the world and the compliance requirements of every single bank that attempts to do international business. And every ransomware attack builds the case for expanding that US penetration. People barely even question it anymore when US courts assert jurisdiction over things that happen outside of our borders. It may seem crazy to suggest that individuals who have nothing to do with the US government, conducting transactions that have no connection to the United States, can be blocked from doing so by the US government. But it's not science fiction. It's already happening. Look at what the US government is doing to Iran and Syria today, for example. We're not just blocking those countries off from US business. We are actively prosecuting anybody in the world from any country who attempts to do business with these countries that we don't like. The US is very powerful. I suppose that even with the US's ever-growing power, it's possible to imagine heroic libertarian dissidents finding the niches necessary to run a cryptocurrency network in opposition to Washington, D.C. But then the carrot comes in and crushes this fantasy. Most people are in crypto today to get rich. Pretty much every politically committed tech-savvy nerd in the world is already in cryptocurrency or already over cryptocurrency. To keep the party going, to keep prices rising, you need scale. And that is what US government regulation offers. This is a process that's already happening, but once crypto submits itself more fully to the US government, literally trillions of dollars of investment capital will become available. I am now almost involuntarily an investor in some cryptocurrencies. The FOMO finally got me. But I would not have made that investment if it weren't for the boring, quasi-safe, government-regulated exchange that I bought it on. Most US finance regulation is already written by Wall Street. As long as some basic investor protections and the ability to tax are preserved, the United States is probably going to provide a lighter and more responsive regulatory touch than any other government. Crypto players will have a simple choice. Go be a Silk Road dissident or go with the US government and get rich. The whole promised cryptocurrency future of border-smashing, bank-disrupting, new-class enriching is very, very possible. It's just going to be in service to the United States. Crypto will only really need one regulator. I think its long-term purpose is most likely going to be making it easier to transfer the rest of the world's wealth to the United States. El Salvador made the news in a big way a month or so back as the first country to adopt Bitcoin as a national currency. To me, it looks like they signed up to be the first loser. In the form of Bitcoin Beach and probably a few other projects, El Salvador is benefiting from the charity of a few Bitcoin millionaires who want to make supporting the currency look like a good idea. I think that's likely to be the extent of El Salvador's winnings. Not that that desperately poor country has much to lose. El Salvador actually already gave up all power over its money supply back in 2001 when it adopted the US dollar. So they may not really be giving up that much in return for the free press of being the Bitcoin first mover. And it's not like El Salvador can get any further under the thumb of the United States. Other countries have a lot more to lose. Cryptocurrency is already being sold as a weapon to be used against oppressive dictatorships like Venezuela and North Korea. The supposed ease of transfer of Bitcoin and the privacy offered by other coins should make it easier to get money in and out of these countries in defiance of their nasty governments. But these technologies don't read the Freedom House reports. They're just as likely to be used against the French government or the South Korean government as they are to be used against any rogue government. In fact, there's a lot more money to be transferred out of our rich allies than there is to be transferred out of North Korea. Crypto will be just another way to suck wealth and power out of everybody else. It'll happen on autopilot, Not all at once, of course. Slowly, over decades, maybe centuries. One tax-dodging rich guy at a time. And as I talked about in the last video, the power that crypto takes away from the world's governments will ensure that they remain mired in the failed Reaganite orthodoxy that we are all dealing with today. Do you think that all sounds a little far-fetched? Well, we've already got highly placed Federal Reserve officials talking about how the United States probably doesn't even have to do a central bank digital currency because the cryptocurrency industry is handling it for us. This isn't some sci-fi dystopia I'm describing. Elements of this are already happening. This final video in my crypto series may seem to conflict with the first. In the first vid, I said that crypto is a vastly bigger threat to the United States than China is, and that it seriously threatens the American way of life. But in this video, I'm saying that crypto will be a powerful tool of US empire. Don't those two concepts conflict? Well, not really. Just because a tool or ideology is useful to the rich and powerful of an empire doesn't mean it will do any good for the vast majority of that empire's citizens. I started this series comparing cryptocurrency to Islam, but I think Christianity might be the better comparison. The first Christian Roman emperor came to power in the year 306. The new religion was initially a great thing for the empire. Arguably, Christianity was the glue that helped Roman elites hold on to their power and wealth for 1100 years after Constantine came to power. It's unlikely, what with all the purges and pillaged cities, but it's just possible that the descendant of a wealthy Roman in the year 300 could still be rich and prestigious in the year 1453 when the Turks crushed Rome's last outpost. Christianity worked out great for the guys on top. But how about the millions of other non-rich folks living in the Roman Empire in the year 300? Well, their standard of living, and in disturbingly many cases their living at all, came to an end within just a couple centuries of the advent of Romanized Christianity. What's good for the people on top in an empire is often not so great for the rest of the people in that empire. Cryptocurrency could prove to be an amazing tool for the folks running US empire, and not so great for the rest of us here on this planet. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'd be grateful if you considered signing up for my email newsletter as well. You'll get a free PDF essay if you do. Thanks.